Section 2.3, carbon-based molecules. Carbon-based molecules are the foundation of life. The foundation of life. Life comes in a bunch of different forms. They have similar structures, but all forms of life are made up of carbon-based molecules. Carbon is called the building block of life because it is the basis of the molecules that make up living things, makes up the structure of living things, and makes up the molecules that carry out life's processes. Carbon's atomic structure makes it unique. Its outermost energy level has 4 valence electrons. Because of these 4 unpaired electrons, carbon is able to make very large molecules. It can bond with 4 other atoms, including itself. Because of the 4 covalent bonds we just mentioned, carbon can make very large molecules. Here is cellulose. This is a very big molecule made of carbon compounds. These are all carbon rings. They're all sugars that are bonded together that forms this large carbohydrate, cellulose. Lauric acid, this is found in coconut oil. This is a type of acid called a fatty acid. It has this carboxylic acid group on the end, and just this long chain of carbons and hydrogens called a hydrocarbon chain or a fatty acid chain. But here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 carbons all in a row. That's a big molecule. These showing more, but there's 4 6 carbon sugars right there. Again, big molecules. So what is the difference between a monomer and a polymer? Well, each polymer is made up of a subunit called a monomer. Okay, when monomers are linked together, they form the large molecule, the polymer. Okay, a polymer is what we're referring to as these carbon-based compounds. So here, this is a small molecule. This is just this cluster of 3 atoms. But you link all these guys together, monomer plus another monomer plus another monomer plus another monomer. Now we're getting a whole bunch of them bonded together, which would form the polymer. So there are 4 carbon-based molecules found in all living things. Carbohydrates, which are sugars. Lipids, which are fats and oils and waxes. Proteins, composed amino acids. And the nucleic acids, which are composed of nucleotides that carry genetic code. Okay, so in every living thing, they have all 4 of these large carbon-based molecules or macromolecules. Okay, other names for these carbon-based molecules or compounds, biomolecules, because these are the molecules of living things. Bio meaning life, molecules. Carbon compounds, because they're composed primarily of carbon. Organic compounds, because they're found in living things. And macromolecules, because they're big. They're much bigger than the monomers that compose them. So you're putting together a whole bunch of monomers, you can make these large macromolecules or polymers. Carbohydrates are polymers that include simple sugars. Okay, the monomer of a carbohydrate is a simple sugar, also called a monosaccharide. Mono being one, saccharide another name for sugar, so single sugars or simple sugars. Their primary function is to be broken down to provide energy for cells. Sugars get broken down to produce ATP, which is an energy currency for living things. Okay, and it's also part of the cell structure, especially in plants. The cellulose that makes up a lot of plants is a large chains of sugars. Examples of carbohydrates would be monosaccharides, would be these single sugars like glucose, fructose, galactose. Disaccharides are when 2 single sugars are linked together. Sucrose is made up of a glucose molecule bonded to a fructose molecule. And polysaccharides, which are more than 2 sugars linked together. Starches, which are also called compound carbohydrates. Cellulose, which is a large carbohydrate in plants. And glycogen, which is how humans and mammals store sugars for later use. These are all carbohydrates. Okay. Lipids are a polymer that include fats, oils, waxes, steroids, hormones, and cholesterol. The monomer is composed of long chains of carbons and hydrogens to make these fatty acids. Okay, it's not like a true monomer, but it's just long chains of these carbons and hydrogens. Primary function of lipids is act as a water barrier. Okay, it's nonpolar, so it's not going to really be attracted to water, specifically in this part of the cell membrane. Okay, this would be the nonpolar or hydrophobic part of the cell membrane, and this doesn't want water, so it's going to keep water out. They're also used as a backup source of energy. They make up the cell structure, the cell membrane, so this is a cross-section of a cell membrane, and they make up hormones. Okay, as you can tell, lipids, this is oil being put in water. These guys are nonpolar, so they do not want to dissolve. When you put them in water, they're going to stay in little globules. They won't mix. So an example of a lipid would be a phospholipid molecule, which is this guy over here. Okay. This is what the cell membrane is made out of. There's just tons of these put in the cell membrane, and they make up the outside part of the cell, as well as many of the other, or all the other membranes that are within a cell. Okay, this top part right here, this is made up of a phosphate group and a glycerol molecule. Okay, and this part is polar, or hydrophilic, water-loving. And this part down here, these are the two fatty acid tails. Okay, chains of carbons and hydrogens that compose this part of it. And this is hydrophobic, meaning it does not like water. Okay, so proteins are another polymer made up of amino acids. The monomer is the amino acid. Okay, and these amino acids are joined together by a specific type of bond called the peptide bond. The order and the number of amino acids determines a protein's function. Okay, so there are 20 different amino acids. Okay, and all of them have the same general shape. They're going to be composed of these three things down here. Okay, an amino group, which is this NH2, which is going to be on one end of it, bonded to a central carbon with a hydrogen, and this R group. Okay, this R group, or this variable side group, and then a carboxyl group, which makes this thing a carboxylic acid, specifically amino acid. Okay, so there's 20 different R groups, which make up the 20 different amino acids. The rest of the amino acid looks just like this, with the amino group, carboxyl group on the end, and the R group in the end, on the middle. Primary function are these guys aid in chemical reactions because they can act as enzymes, biological molecules that lower activation energy for reactions, allow them to go at normal cell conditions, and allows them to go faster. They can also transport materials because they can act as cell membrane proteins. They could be a pore like this, where it's just kind of like a hole through the cell membrane and certain materials can pass through, or a carrier protein where certain molecules will fit into this specific molecules, and the protein will change shape, allow it to pass into or out of the cell. They can also identify the cell type, so the organism knows these cells are some of the homies, and they assist in cell communication because cells do need to communicate with one another. Okay, some examples of proteins. There are several. Pepsin is one that's a digestive enzyme found in the stomach. It helps break down food. Okay, ATP synthase. This is an enzyme. Remember, enzymes are specific things that help reactions go quickly. ATP synthase is an enzyme that helps make ATP, which is the energy currency, or the molecule that cells want to use for energy for all their cellular reactions. And then aquaporin is another protein, which is a water channel protein. Okay, kind of like the pores we showed in the previous example. Our last of the four biological molecules are nucleic acids. Now, this is again a polymer made of nucleotides. Nucleotides are the monomer. Okay, nucleotide is the monomer of nucleic acid, and it's made up of a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen-containing base. Okay, the main function of nucleic acids are to store genetic information. DNA specifically stores the genetic information, and they also contain information for making proteins. And proteins are very, very necessary for living things. It's one of the most versatile of the biological molecules. It has just tons of different functions that proteins can carry out. And DNA and RNA together function to produce proteins. DNA has the code, RNA carries the code and translated in the amino acid chain, which is a protein. Nucleic acid examples are two, DNA and RNA. Now we're going to get into a lot more detail on this stuff later on, but suffice it to say at this point that DNA is a double-stranded nucleic acid and RNA is a single-stranded nucleic acid. DNA is going to have these bases here in the middle paired up, where RNA does not. DNA is like the entire library of your genetic material. It has literally instructions for everything that you would need to do as a living organism, where RNA is specific to just small sections of the DNA. So it's going to, again, if the DNA is like the library, this would be like a book in the library where you're getting just enough information to carry out one specific task of making a protein.